to the Action Network studio in New York City. I'm Maria Marino, and this is Green Dot Daily. We come to you live every weekday at 3 Eastern on the Action Network YouTube channel and the Action app. You can also find us on demand. Coming up on the show, it's draft day in the NFL. Could the number 1 and number 2 picks be from Alabama? Plus, what's the latest on the quarterback carousel? We will have a handful of experts joining us to make sure you are ready for all things draft. So stick around. But we do want to start in the NBA, where 2 first-round series came to an end last night. First, the Knicks closed out the Cavs with a 106-95 Game 5 victory. Jalen Brunson led his team in scoring in all 4 wins, averaging 24 points for the series. It's the first time in 10 years the Knicks are advancing to round 2. Then in another thriller, Jimmy Butler forced overtime in Milwaukee, and the 8-seeded Heat went on to upset the top-seeded Bucks, 128-126 for the gentleman's sweep. Butler averaged 37.6 points throughout the series. As we welcome in Action Network senior writer Matt Moore. Look, we've seen playoff Jimmy before, but this felt like an entirely new level. How do you assess a team that looked like they had no business winning a playoff series 2 weeks ago?
I think, honestly, you've got to point to Eric Spoelstra, the job that he and his staff do with getting players ready, the game planning, the commitment on defense, which was much higher than it was in the regular season. And obviously, you got to credit Butler. You know, Butler, there was a lot of advanced metrics that kind of suggested he was a top 5 player in the league this season. And we kind of brushed it off as like, well, look at the Heat. They're not any good. But look, here they are. I think you have to credit Butler to – there's no superlative you can use that is too much for Jimmy Butler. He was absolutely sensational, but also – I got to be real accurate here that the Heat played well above that. We'll get to that in a second. I do think we got to talk about Milwaukee and about their struggles. Milwaukee, I think, is facing a lot of changes this offseason. This is obviously not just a disappointment, but a massive letdown, even if Giannis doesn't want to call it a failure. Brook Lopez is a free agent. Chris Middleton has a player option. You know, Giannis was kind of critical of the coverage of Jimmy Butler, and rightfully so, defensively from the Bucks. I think there's a lot of indications, and this has been going around the league for a while, that there's going to be changes this summer for Milwaukee. Their cap straps. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens here. I don't know what the end result of this is going to be, but Milwaukee, I think, is facing absolutely massive changes. On the Heat side, look, they shot over 50% on contested threes. They had the highest differential in expected field goal percentage versus their actual, where they shot just absolutely incredible. They had the best three-point percentage in the playoffs after being 17th in the regular season. It's absolutely wild. And on top of all of it, you got Jimmy Butler doing absolutely everything, including that wild shot to force overtime. His takeover in these fourth quarters was insane. This is some Jordan level stuff. I do not use that lightly. This was some Jordan level clutch performance, to the point where I will mention this. Jimmy Butler, 40-1 to win finals MVP right now. 40-1. I've definitely taken that in the market.
I mean, that is definitely something to look at. And I'm so I love that you mentioned the Jordan thing, because I swear to you, Matt, sitting on my couch last night, I said the same thing. I compared Butler to Jordan, not as necessarily as the overall all-around player, but in the clutch moments, he just has that other gear about him that he turns on, and it's just been so fun to watch. And by the way, he shot himself almost 60% in this series. Now, we have our matchup for the next round. The Heat will visit the Knicks at MSG on Sunday. That's going to be fun. What are your early thoughts on that series?
You know, I started out and I was kind of actually looking at Miami. I was like, well, you know, I think Miami, with their experience and how Jimmy's playing, I kind of lean that way. But the more I started looking at the kind of the matchups and thinking about it, I think I'm leaning a little bit more towards Knicks. We'll see where I wind up on it. It's close. And the market, I think, kind of reflects that with where the series price is at. Julius Randle is going to be reevaluated on Thursday. His ankle is still really bothering him. He was a tough matchup for him versus Evan Mobley and Jared Allen in that first round. He didn't play necessarily all that well. Going to have a lot more opportunities here. You know, Kevin Love, these types of players. if they put Bam Adebayo on him, that means Mitchell Robinson is going to once again absolutely dominate on the inside with the offensive rebounding the way that he did versus the Cavaliers. So like that's an important matchup to kind of keep an eye on. But Randall should be able to have a better series. I also don't think he's vital though for the Knicks' chances in the series. Miami's very depleted here. Like the fact that the Bucks loss is a disaster on multiple levels. Not only do they lose to the Heat, the 8th seed, no Tyler Hero, broken hand, probably not going to be back at least for the first part of the series, if not well into the late round, probably not until the conference finals if they make it. Victor Oladipo out for the season with a patellar tear. Like this Heat team is down to almost nothing. They're just finding answers with guys like Gabe Vincent and guys like Kevin Love and guys like Max Strus making plays all over the floor. The Heat shot variance though seems unlikely to sustain. It was such an incredible performance versus Milwaukee. That's tough to do. They shot over 50% on contested threes. The season average is 35%. That's not promising for them. I do think that Josh Hart is a great counter to Jimmy Butler. They have probably a better defender to throw at Jimmy Butler than the Bucks had for most of the series until they found Wes Matthews in Game 5 and then completely went away from him. Can I really stress how badly the Bucks screwed this up? The Knicks rebounding edge should continue here. Bam Adebayo is the only real center on the floor. They'll play Cody Zeller, but he's not really great on the glass. So the Knicks second chance points, which usually I don't think are a big factor in playoff series, that should be another factor in this one after being a factor in the first round. I'm starting to lean a lot towards the Knicks, and you're seeing the market kind of reflect that. They opened as shorter favorites and have moved heavier favorites overnight. The market definitely, I think, is leaning towards the Knicks to advance to the conference finals.
What I am eager to see is the defensive game plan against Jimmy Butler, and Tibbs is going to be prepared. And the other thing is, these last couple Heat victories, they were down big and clawed back, and I feel like that's going to be unlikely to happen with the defensive pressure of the Knicks, especially at Madison Square Garden. However, I'm really looking forward to seeing how this shakes out. Now, we do have one more game tonight. The Celtics laying points on the road, trying to put away the Hawks. What's your prediction there?
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and take the Celtics -7. I grabbed him -5.5, and the market obviously agrees since it's moved to 7. I'll go ahead and take it to 7 as well. The Celtics have still dominated this series. They led by 10 entering the fourth quarter in that Game 5 meltdown at home. Teams in that spot up 10 going into the fourth quarter had been 30-0 in an elimination spot in Game 5. 30-1 now. Good job, Celtics. But look, they've been better this entire season. They are still the best team in the league. They have these letdowns. It's worth noting for future series to keep an eye. Like, this is not a Celtics team that puts away their opponent. Series should not be going to 6, but I think they do close it out here, even in Atlanta. Teams up 3-2, favored on the road, 27-13, 68% against the spread. That's enough to get me on the Celtics here, -7. I'll take them to advance to the conference semifinals.
Well, if Boston advances, they'll play Philly in round 2 starting Monday night. And for more of Matt's analysis, make sure you check out the Buckets podcast. Matt, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Green Dot Daily is presented by BetMGM. Use bonus code ACTION when signing up to get up to $1,000 paid back in bonus bets if you don't win your first bet. Terms and conditions apply. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Without further ado, we move to the NFL draft, and here are the favorites for picks 1 through 5. Bryce Young at -2,500 to go first overall. Will Anderson -350 to go second. CJ Stroud at +100 to go number 3. Will Levis +125 to go number 4. And Jalen Carter -250 at number 5. With that, we bring in Luke Swain, aka Vegas Refund, on Twitter. So, Luke, when you look at those odds, what stands out to you the most?
I've bet a lot of drafts, and prior to today, I would say the NBA draft last year was the most chaotic, and this is like 100 times that, where what stands out to me is that every pick that there's a favorite right now, they were not the favorites yesterday. Guys that were +300 yesterday are now even money. Will Anderson +300, he's a heavy favorite, which just tells you how sensitive the market is, and I'm speechless, to be honest.
What conclusions are you drawing from all this line movement, and how do you approach the first few picks in the draft knowing what you know?
So first off, I don't think anyone truly knows anything. And in a sensitive market, I think the day of the draft, we have a combination of a lot of recreational bettors wanting to bet the draft because it's on tonight, and then others who might know something, and then generally just like a lot of steam chasers where it's very easy to see a line moving in a market that is very informationally based and jumping on that same bet that you see that's moving, which creates somewhat of a ripple effect that it just implodes. Where Bryce, of course, is going 1. Will Anderson, from like 100% of the mocks have Will Anderson at 2. 3 and 4 are what's really chaotic, where 3, we've kind of just been depending on a trade that has not happened yet. But there are teams, specifically like the Titans, that are coming out, and we're assuming they're the favorite to move up to 3 for, let's say, CJ Stroud. But 4 also, which I'm just going through them all now. Number 4 pick, Will Levis, has been the favorite, almost as if we knew who they were going to pick for weeks now. And then this morning, Anthony Richardson, probably based off of a few media tweets, is actually now the favorite, where they're both plus money, but Richardson's at even and Levis is at plus 125. The minimal certainty that you had has been zeroed out by everything. And at this point, the only thing we really know is Bryce is going number 1. We think.
Well, I mean, it's funny. I'm glad that you even, feel certain about that. But is there anything in particular that's swaying you one way or the other with those, 2, 3, and 4 picks?
So if I was to do like 1 through 4 right now, just like my assumptions, it would be like Bryce 1. I would say Will Anderson 2. And then if there's a trade up, I would say Stroud 3, and which in 4, which I don't want, I would honestly say Richardson at this point. But 3 really depends on what team trades up. Where I think if the Titans trade up to 3, they'd be interested in Stroud. But if the Texans trade back into 3, and they don't take a quarterback at 2, we assume, I think they would take Levis. But then you see things that they have interest in at Stroud at number 2. So I don't think anyone knows, and betting into the top 4 picks right now, or people are just hedging out of bets that they had at this point.
I have a question for you. If the draft starts and say we get news of a trade, maybe for that 3 spot, is this a situation where you could see yourself placing a quick bet within those first couple of picks, or is that not realistic?
I guess if it's the Titans trading up, I would lean Stroud or Richardson. But if it's the Texans trading up, I would lean Levis, then Stroud, which those would be the live betting opportunities. And if you have a lean between either 2, I think you can jump on either of those. But yeah, there's still, unless the quarterback goes 2, you really won't know. Where if it goes quarterback, then there's a trade up. Where if Levis goes 2, let's just say, you would assume someone's trading up for Stroud at 3 because there's only 2 left, and Richardson's kind of the 4th that everyone's assuming is going to go. If a quarterback who everyone assumes is either Levis or Stroud at 2.
Okay, well, listen, I appreciate you.
Did you get all that?
Yeah. No, I mean, it's a lot. It depends. It's like if this, then that. So I appreciate you taking us through that. And again, it's just one of those things where the lines have moved so much that it's really tough to get a handle on.
And the one guy that seems like he's falling is Tyree Wilson, who's been the favorite at number 2. That there are reports of his medicals checking out, and now it's coming out that they might not have, which has a lot to do with him possibly falling. That I don't think he's going to make it.
All right, we will be looking forward to that. Luke, thanks so much for hanging out.
Thank you.
Well, we just mentioned the line movement for defensive lineman Will Anderson, and to get more specific, he was at plus 500 on Saturday to go 2nd overall, plus 300 as of yesterday, and currently around minus 350 or so. As we keep this draft talk going and say hello to our director of research, Evan Abrams. So, Evan, could we really see a pair of Alabama teammates going 1 and 2 in this draft?
Well, it sure seems like it right now when you look at the markets, but I think it's really important to kind of start this conversation with actually drafting on draft. I'm betting on draft day, right? So it's a should do and will do business, in my opinion. It's the Cardinals should trade out of the third pick, but what will the Cardinals actually do is probably what you should be betting into. So talking about Alabama 1-2, it would be the third time since the merger that the same school would get the first and second pick in the draft. It happened with Penn State in 2000. It happened with Nebraska in 1984. Now, I liked Will Anderson to be the first defensive player taken. I think I took this on that show, to the show 2 or 3 days ago, and he was plus 150, 140 at the time. Now, he's minus 350 to go second overall after what we believe to be Bryce Young. So at this point, my best guess, quarterback 1, not quarterback 2. Then I think Arizona is going to trade out of the 3 before the draft. Because if they don't by the time the draft happens, usually history tells you they're probably going to stick with the pick. And then for 4, I think the Colts have to go quarterback. And at 5, I think Seattle is going to be really enamored by Jalen Carter. So if you want your like best chaos bet, I actually think Bryce Young at 1, CJ Stroud at 2, and Will Anderson at 3 is plus 750. And a fun stat for you is quarterbacks have only gone top 3 times since the merger. So that would also be something we haven't seen a lot lately.
Going top 3 since the merger, meaning how many quarterbacks?
So quarterbacks all going top 3. So
okay, 1, 2, and 3. Okay, yeah. Copy that. Yeah, we remember that from 2021. Now it's coming back to me. So apart from that, just what else are you looking at in terms of value and finding some bets here?
Okay, so let's rattle off a few. So number 1 would be tight ends. I think under 2.5 tight ends at, I'll quote Raybon here, at any juice, I think is an interesting gamble at this point. It basically says Luke Musgrave, Sam Laporta, or Darnell Washington has to make their way into the first round. And 3 tight ends in the first round has only happened twice since 1980. And 2017 would be the outlier since 2000. So I really believe at any juice, that's probably the right wager. The other one, and I've been touting this, I said it on the Favorites pod, I said it on the Action Network podcast, but over 1.5 running backs in the first round, it's now up to like minus 350. So I don't think at that number, it's probably worth it, but I do think there are some dart throws you can probably take to get into this market. One, and I know Sean's going to talk about this in a second, but I'm not sure Bijan Robinson to Atlanta makes a ton of sense considering what they've got in the backfield. So I think a dart throw at him kind of across the board, maybe Philly is probably a good bet. And then it's Gibbs. I took Cincinnati at 10-1 a few days ago. They're now 5-1. And then I think Buffalo at 10-1 and Detroit at 18 at 20-1 are 2 places that you could see him go.
All right, that makes sense. What about wide receivers?
Oh boy. So Jackson Smith-Njigba has been the guy. He's been everyone we've been talking about in that 13 range, maybe the 12 range. I think it's Zay Flowers as a dart throw. I was 5-1 a day ago. Now it's about plus 350 in the market. Another fun way to do it. If you want to take Zay Flowers 1 and Njigba 2, it's actually 5-1 in a few sports books right now. So you can get that price again by just taking those 2 in that order. I think that's interesting.
I think so too, and I like how you're laying out a few different options and ways to approach this for us. Any parting bets you want to leave us with?
Yeah, so it's a any juice situation again. I just think under 6.5 offensive linemen is just a bit too much. So to rattle off, Paris, Peter, Broderick, Darnell, Anton Harrison are 5 who are definitely going to make their way into the first round. Then I believe Osiris Torrance will probably get in there. Aside from that, I don't see another one getting there. So I think under 6.5 offensive linemen, decent wager at this point.
I agree. And Evan, we know how much work and time you put into this and crunching all the numbers so that every single thought that you're giving us has reasoning behind it. And we appreciate it so much in these chaotic times of draft week. So thanks for coming on.
Enjoy.
If you thought we were done covering the draft, think again. Sean Koerner from our analytics team has updated his mock draft for the top 12 picks. And keep in mind, he's finished top 10 in accuracy in Fantasy Pros mock draft contest each of the last 2 years. As you can see, he has the Titans trading up to 3 to get a quarterback. Sean joins us now, so explain yourself, and let's start with the thought process behind that trade with the Cardinals to get C.J. Stroud going at 3.
Yeah, so I mean, the only thing we can really be sure of right now is Bryce Young going number 1 overall. After that, it's just pure chaos. And it does look like the Texans could be skipping, selecting a quarterback at number 2 and taking the best defensive player in Will Anderson. And for months, I have been saying that's going to trigger a ripple effect for the next 11 or 12 picks. And it does look like that's going to be what happens. So it's going to put a ton of pressure on the Cardinals to trade down for that pick. And I think the Titans obviously make the most sense. So I think the Titans will trade up to the Cardinals here to take C.J. Stroud. And the Cardinals, they have one of the worst rosters in the NFL. They really need to stock up on draft picks. So it does make sense for them once Anderson is off the board. Now, if they do keep this pick and Anderson is off the board, I think, Paris Johnson would be sneaky at plus 400. I think they would probably go with him if they keep this pick. But that's sort of the thought process I have right now with Stroud going 3rd to the Titans.
Well, if the Texans sort of take advantage of getting Anderson at number 2, you would think they'll need a quarterback somewhere. And so you have Anthony Richardson going to them at 12. What about that?
Yeah, so a lot of chaos led to that happening. So I think the Colts, right now it looks like a coin flip, really, whether they're going to take Will Levis or Anthony Richardson. As of now, I have Levis going there, but by the end of the day, I could have Richardson going there. That's how much of a toss-up it is. I think they could afford to draft a player like Richardson who might not be ready this season. They have Gardner Minshew, so he's the perfect bridge quarterback. Have him start all season. And then when Richardson's ready to go, you can, start him. And I think Richardson has the highest ceiling in this class potentially. So I could see them going with Richardson. If they don't, whoever doesn't go here, whether it's Levis or Richardson is still on the board, they could fall because, the Seahawks, Lions, Raiders, Falcons could take a quarterback or trade out of that, but I just don't see it happening. So I have Richardson falling all the way down to 12, or this could be Will Levis, to the Texans. So at the end of the day, the Texans end up getting the best defensive player in Will Anderson and still get a top 4 quarterback at 12. So that's a dream scenario for the Texans, and that's what I have happening right now.
That would be nice for them. And let's talk about running backs for a second. You have the first running back going off the board at 10, Bijan Robinson, to the Eagles. What's the thought there?
Yeah, so, drafting a running back early is obviously no longer in vogue. I'm not saying I would do that, but, Bijan is a generational talent. He is just going to be a stud running back from the get-go. So his most likely landing spot is Atlanta at number 8. However, in my current mock, I have Tyree Wilson falling there. I just don't see him getting past 8. So I think the Falcons would scoop him up there. But, the Falcons are linked to Bijan at 8. So that's his most likely spot. If Atlanta takes Tyree Wilson there, and then, the Chicago actually has a chance of taking Bijan as well. I think Eagles would make a ton of sense because, presumably you'd have, the edge rusher taken at 8, an offensive lineman taken at 9. And that would move Bijan potentially to the top of their draft board. So that's why I've been kind of eyeing Bijan to go in the top 10 at plus 110 odds. If you were to add up the odds of Bijan going to the Falcons, Bears, or Eagles, it's right around 50%. But like I mentioned with the Eagles, those are dynamic odds. So if, Bijan is not taken by the Falcons, not taken by the Bears, the odds of the Eagles taking him go up. So I'm actually getting the dynamic odds closer to 60% that he goes in the top 10.
Superb analysis as always. Before I let you go, can I just ask you what your draft ritual is, and do you sit there and do you have just this feeling of satisfaction when it's done, or how are you going to be feeling tonight?
Well, nervous heading up to the draft, and then once it starts and everything locks, I will crack open a beer and just sweat my bets and enjoy it.
Enjoy the sweat, my friend. And I understand after this, you're going to get to take a nice long vacation. Is that right?
Yes, I will be gone in Spain and Portugal for 10 days with no computer, nothing to recharge the batteries a bit. And then I'll be back for some baseball and WNBA. Looking forward to it.
Oh, absolutely. Same here. Well, enjoy, and we will see you then. Sean, thank you.
Thank you.
And since we haven't touched on baseball yet today, we're going to close the show with a couple player props courtesy of Munaf Manji. So take a listen.
For my first player prop, I'm going to go over to the matchup between the Oakland A's and the Los Angeles Angels, and I am taking the over 8.5 strikeouts for Shohei Ohtani. The Angels send Ohtani to the mound for the final game of this series, and I'm expecting Ohtani's dominance to continue at home against the Oakland A's. Thus far this season, Ohtani has pitched 14 shutout innings at home and allowed only 3 hits in that span. Additionally, in 2 starts this season at home, Ohtani has struck out 17 batters. Ohtani historically has been a strikeout machine against the Oakland A's. In fact, in 5 career games in Angel Stadium against the A's, Ohtani has recorded double-digit strikeouts against them, including a game earlier this season where he struck out 10 batters. This season, the A's have a 24% team strikeout rate, a 24.8% strikeout rate versus right-handed pitching, which ranks the 9th most in the MLB, and a 26.2% strikeout rate against right-handed pitching on the road, which ranks number 6 in the entire MLB. I expect Ohtani's dominance to continue tonight against the Oakland A's and racking up the strikeouts, so take Shohei Ohtani over 8.5 strikeouts here today. For my second player prop, I'm going to the pitching matchup of the night between Dylan Cease and Shane McClanahan, and taking McClanahan over 6.5 strikeouts against the Chicago White Sox. McClanahan is off to a great start this season for the Rays, where he is 4-0 with a 1.87 ERA and has accumulated 37 total strikeouts. McClanahan has faced the White Sox 3 times in his career and has gone over this projection of 6.5 in 2 out of those 3 games. One of those career games was just last week against the White Sox, where McClanahan struck out 10 White Sox batters. The Chicago White Sox ranked number 8 in team strikeout percentage this season against left-handed pitching, and over the last 2 weeks, they are number 1 in team strikeout percentage against left-handed pitching. I expect the same success tonight for Shane McClanahan as he had last week against the Chicago White Sox, so take Shane McClanahan over 6.5 strikeouts today against the White Sox.
Remember, any picks we give out here on the show, you can easily reference by following Green Dot Daily in the Action app. Do it. We keep track so you don't have to. Green Dot Daily is presented by BetMGM. Use bonus code ACTION when signing up to get up to $1,000 paid back in bonus bets if you don't win your first bet. Terms and conditions apply. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. That's going to do it for Green Dot Daily. I'm Maria Marino. Thanks for watching today. Enjoy the draft tonight, and I'll see you back here Friday at 3 Eastern on the Action Network YouTube channel and the Action app.